celebrity?" the co-pilot asked. "It's a surprise. I'll brief both of you later." "What's a surprise?" A deep male voice filled her left ear as Annette turned to find Ken Wolfe standing in the cockpit door. "Ken, good to see you." "You were talking about a surprise?" She nodded. I'll let you get settled first, then I'll tell you." He smiled and moved into the cockpit. He placed his flight bag to the left of the captain's chair and turned to greet the co-pilot with a handshake before sitting down. Ken Wolfe let his eyes move with practiced familiarity around the cockpit as he completed the mental transition to airline captain, his mind focused exclusively on the task of orchestrating an airline flight. It was a comforting ritual, the co-pilot briefing, the flight attendant briefing, and the cockpit setups, as well as the paperwork duties. Even the presence of a malcontent businessman and coach, as reported by Annette, had an element of comfort about it, a business-as-usual veneer. "You need me to come back and talk to the man?" Ken asked. "No, but something tells me our long-suffering passenger will feel even more deprived if he doesn't succeed in having a really bad day. But to balance the equation, we've got a celebrity legal eagle in first class who's a real gentleman. That's a surprise." The captain looked puzzled. "I'm sorry, who are you talking about?" "Well," Annette stretched the word as she handed the man's business card to the captain as if it were a trophy. Ken smiled at her before looking down at the gold seal which adorned the upper left-hand corner of the card. It was the logo of the United States Department of Justice. His eyes moved to the clear black type in the middle of the card. He blinked and looked again. "Rudolph Bostich," it said. "I read earlier this week," Annette was saying, "that he's the front-runner for Attorney General. The President is supposed to be submitting his name to Congress this week." She watched the captain for a few seconds, puzzled at his silence. "You okay, Ken?" All the blood had drained from Ken Wolfe's face, and the hand holding the card was shaking slightly. Annette heard him take a ragged breath and swallow hard. "I'm okay, Annette, just a scratch in the throat," he said in a strained monotone. "Where is Mr. Bostich?" "He's in seat 1A, Ken. Should I relay a message or something?" "No." Wolfe shook his head a little too vigorously, his response too sharp as he handed back the business card, as if it were a spider. "No, please don't." Ken suddenly threw off his seatbelt and lunged toward her, questioning through tight lips. "Anyone in there?" with a quick gesture toward the lavatory, located just behind the cockpit. Annette glanced at the lavatory door in confusion. It's empty," she managed, but he was already brushing past her to slip inside, his face a pasty white, his eyes vacant. She heard the lock slide into place, followed immediately by the sound of vomiting. Colorado Springs International Airport, 9:44 a.m. With a late departure behind them, First Officer David Gates made the flaps-up call as the powerful 737 climbed southbound 1,000 feet above the suburbs of Colorado Springs, soaring into the clear blue sky with an amazing view of Pikes Peak on his right. "Roger, flaps up," Ken Wolfe repeated. "I'm setting speed 210 knots and level change." Even his voice sounded different now. Not exactly carefree, but calm and collected, where he'd sounded haunted and distracted just minutes before. Why? Just because a national figure had come on board? David thought about the captain's sudden trip to the lav just before pushback. Departure time had come and gone, but the captain had remained inside. David had left his seat then and tapped on the lavatory door to ask if everything was all right, but the captain's pained voice from within had been frightening, more of an agonized whine than a voice. David was prepared to alert crew scheduling when the lav door opened suddenly, and Ken Wolfe emerged, looking strangely fit and serene. He'd smiled at his co-pilot then and slipped back into the left seat, as if nothing had happened. "Are you okay, Captain?" David had asked. "I feel better now, David. Better than I've felt in years." "Well, good. I was beginning to get worried." "Sometimes," Ken began, "God gives us strange and wonderful opportunities, don't you think, David?" The voice of the Denver Center controller cut into David's thoughts. "Airbridge 90, Denver Center, good morning. Turn right now to a heading of 260. Climb 2, maintain flight level 330. Instinctively, David's finger caressed the transmit button in case the captain failed to reply. Airbridge co-pilots were used to Ken Wolfe not responding to radio calls, even though the captain was supposed to be talking to the controllers whenever it was the co-pilot's turn to fly the airplane. Ken was often moody, often distracted, some days saying almost nothing, other days talking nonstop. That had been the case ever since Ken had joined the airline almost a year before. He was courteous enough, but the unpredictability of his moods had become an uncomfortable legend, and flying with him meant added stress. This time, however, Ken's voice replied instantly. "Okay, Denver, heading